At first glance, Arizona shines under the blistering sun. Deserts stretching wide, vibrant cities bustling with life, and endless skies that promise freedom. But beneath this sun-soaked beauty lies a harsh, growing reality. Tens of thousands of people here don't have a place to call home. Right now, more than 10,000 Arizonans live without shelter. Some under freeway overpasses, others huddled in tents along dusty sidewalks. That number is rising faster than the desert heat in July. This isn't just a statistic. It's a crisis breathing and living on the streets of Phoenix, Tucson, and countless small towns. Arizona was once a land of opportunity, where families thrived, businesses grew, and communities bonded over shared hopes. But in recent years, economic shifts, soaring housing costs, and dwindling support systems have left thousands struggling to survive. Take the story of Maria. A mother of two, she came to Arizona seeking a fresh start. But when the rent doubled unexpectedly, she was pushed out of her apartment. Now, Maria sleeps in a shelter by night and searches for work by day, fighting an invisible war against despair. Or think of David, a veteran who once proudly served his country. Returning home, he battled injuries and PTSD alone, ultimately losing his home and finding himself on the cold streets of Phoenix. These aren't just isolated stories. They are the faces of a crisis that touches all ages, races, and backgrounds. The desert nights are especially cruel. Temperatures can drop near freezing, and those without shelter have nowhere to escape the cold or the dangerous loneliness. Minimalist US asks you to stand with these individuals. By liking and subscribing, you help raise awareness and bring hope to people fighting to survive Arizona's unforgiving streets. Economic data paints a grim picture. In the past decade, housing costs in Phoenix have soared by over 50%, while wages have barely kept pace. Affordable housing units have dwindled, and shelters operate at full capacity, often turning people away. Add to this the ongoing opioid epidemic and mental health challenges, and you see a perfect storm fueling the homelessness crisis. Yet, amid the hardship, stories of kindness and resilience shine through. Volunteers at local food banks and community organizations offer meals and hope, often working late into the night. Faith groups and nonprofits run outreach programs to connect the homeless with medical care, counseling, and temporary shelter. In downtown Phoenix, a small park transforms every evening into a gathering place where people share stories, food, and dreams, even as the harsh reality of homelessness surrounds them. These moments of humanity remind us that homelessness is not a choice. It's a circumstance that demands our compassion and action. If you feel moved by these stories, remember to support Minimalist US by liking and subscribing. When you walk through the streets of downtown Phoenix at sunrise, you notice a haunting contrast. The first rays of sunlight bounce off glass skyscrapers, yet only a block away, people are waking up on thin blankets laid across concrete. Their belongings fit into one plastic bag or a worn-out backpack, and their bedroom is a patch of sidewalk. Some cover themselves with cardboard to keep out the morning chill. Others are already on the move, searching for breakfast at a church kitchen or lining up outside a shelter before the day's heat sets in. This is the rhythm of survival in Arizona's urban heart. Statistics may explain part of the crisis, but they can't capture the sound of a child coughing in the cold, or the way a mother hides her tears from her kids, pretending everything is fine. In Maricopa County alone, homelessness has jumped by nearly 35% in the past 3 years. The COVID-19 pandemic left deep scars, jobs lost, evictions executed, and savings drained. For many, there was no safety net left to catch them. Consider the case of Tom, a construction worker who once earned enough to support himself comfortably. When an injury forced him to stop working, medical bills piled up faster than he could pay them. With no family nearby, he lost his apartment within months. Now, Tom sleeps under a freeway bridge, the rumble of cars above serving as both lullaby and reminder of the life he once had. Minimalist US urges you, don't look away. These people are our neighbors, our veterans, our friends. By liking and subscribing, you're joining a movement to raise awareness and provide real help to those forgotten by the system. Shelters in Phoenix and Tucson are at breaking point. Some turn away dozens each night simply because there's no space left. Outdoor encampments have sprung up in alleys, riverbeds, and empty lots. In the summer, the blistering desert heat becomes a deadly enemy. Temperatures can soar above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, turning a lack of shelter into a fight for survival. The heat doesn't discriminate, but it hits the homeless hardest. Hospitals in Maricopa County, have reported a sharp increase in heat-related illnesses and deaths among unsheltered individuals. In 2023 alone, over 600 people experiencing homelessness in Arizona died from extreme weather, untreated illness, or violence. Still, even in these dark realities, you find sparks of resilience. Like Denise, who sells handmade bracelets on street corners to afford a cheap motel for her and her teenage son. Or Carlos, who dreams of opening a food truck once he can save enough from odd jobs. These stories prove that homelessness is not the end of someone's journey. But without help, their chances of rebuilding are slim. On the outskirts of Tucson, where the desert meets the edge of the city, rows of tents line a dry riverbed. The ground here is cracked, scattered with old shoes, empty water bottles, and broken chairs that someone once called furniture. At night, the wind whips through the open space, carrying sand into every corner. People wrap themselves in thin blankets, hoping the morning sun will bring warmth. But in Arizona, warmth quickly turns into searing heat. You see makeshift kitchens built from cinder blocks and tin sheets, where families cook simple meals on small propane burners. You hear laughter, two children chasing each other through the dust. But it's the kind of laughter that's rare and fleeting, as though the kids know deep down how fragile their world is. Some of these families have been here for weeks, others for years. They move when the police clear the encampments, only to set up again somewhere else. It's a cycle without an end, and it drains both body and spirit. The root causes here are layered. Arizona's rental market has become one of the most expensive in the nation, with rent in cities like Phoenix increasing by nearly 80% in the last decade. Affordable housing developments can't keep up, and waiting lists for low-income apartments often stretch into years. Healthcare is another breaking point. Many of the people here are dealing with chronic illnesses or untreated injuries. Without insurance or money, even a minor medical problem can spiral into a crisis that costs them their home. One woman I met, we'll call her Linda, has severe asthma. Her medication was already expensive, but when her job at a retail store was cut during the pandemic, she had to choose between paying rent or buying her inhalers. She chose her health and lost her apartment. Now she sleeps in a tent by the river, always keeping her inhaler within arm's reach. There's also a silent epidemic: loneliness. Homelessness often means separation from family, friends, and any kind of community. Without that support, mental health deteriorates fast. In Arizona, mental illness is both a cause and a consequence of life on the streets. But the resilience of the human spirit is extraordinary. In Tucson's encampments, people share food, water, and even small radios to listen to music at night. A former chef named Marcus cooks big pots of soup when he can, feeding dozens. He says it's his way of staying human in a place designed to strip you of dignity. This is what the streets teach: survival, generosity, and the importance of holding on to small joys. In the heart of Phoenix, there's a stretch of road locals call the Zone. Once just a cluster of blocks near the city's downtown, it has grown into one of the largest concentrations of homelessness in Arizona. Tents line both sides of the street, some patched with duct tape, others barely standing. The air smells faintly of smoke from small cooking fires, mixed with the sharp scent of unwashed clothes and asphalt baking in the sun. During the day, the heat radiates off the pavement so fiercely it feels like it could burn through shoes. People sit in whatever shade they can find, under tattered umbrellas, against the shadow of a building, or crouched beneath makeshift tarps. Dogs lie on the ground beside their owners, panting heavily. Police cars roll by slowly, not stopping unless there's a disturbance. Outreach workers move from tent to tent, offering water bottles, hygiene kits, or referrals to shelters that are already full. One man, Robert, tells me he's been here for 3 years. He once worked in landscaping, but when his truck broke down, he lost both his job and his only reliable transportation. It's not just about finding work, he says. It's about getting a chance to get back in the game. And out here, that chance is rare. The Zone is both a refuge and a danger. Here, people look out for each other, but violence and theft are constant threats. Arguments can break out over something as small as a bottle of water or a patch of shade. At night, the area feels different. Quieter, but more tense, as if everyone is bracing for something. The medical risks are immense. The extreme summer heat can be deadly in a matter of hours, and winters bring bitter cold. Without access to clean water, many here suffer from dehydration, skin infections, or untreated wounds. Public perception adds another weight to their struggle. For many residents in surrounding neighborhoods, the Zone is an eyesore, something they'd rather not see. Efforts to clean it up often mean pushing people farther from resources, scattering them into less visible corners of the city. And yet, within this sea of hardship, you find small acts of humanity. A woman shares her last bottle of cold water with a stranger. A man repairs someone else's torn tent with his only roll of tape. These gestures might seem small, but on the streets, they can mean survival. Robert tells me about a friend who recently died from heat stroke. He was only 42, Robert says quietly. One bad day was all it took. His voice shakes. Not from anger, but from the exhaustion of watching people disappear one by one. This is why stories like these matter. They are not statistics. They are reminders that behind every tent, every sidewalk bed, there is a life that once had a home, dreams, and a future. Travel north toward Flagstaff, and the scene changes, but the struggle remains. Here, the air is cooler, the pines rise tall, and the streets feel quieter. Yet homelessness has taken root even in this mountain town. The shelters here are smaller, often run by volunteers, and they fill up quickly when the temperatures drop below freezing. In the colder months, frost clings to tent fabric and sleeping bags, and the ground turns hard as stone. Those without adequate gear face frostbite within hours. Some try to find shelter in old vans or RVs parked along the edges of town. Others camp deep in the forest to avoid being moved along by police. But isolation brings its own dangers: wild animals, injuries with no one to help, and the sheer loneliness of being cut off from human contact. I meet Jacob, a 19-year-old who left home after aging out of the foster care system. He came to Flagstaff hoping to find seasonal work, but when the tourist season ended, so did his paycheck. Now he's sleeping under a highway overpass, huddled under layers of thrift store blankets. His story is painfully common. Young people leaving foster care, women fleeing domestic violence, seniors on fixed incomes, all find themselves at risk in Arizona's shifting economy. Local food banks do what they can, distributing canned goods, bread, and occasionally fresh produce. Churches open their doors on cold nights, turning pews into makeshift beds. But resources here are stretched thin, and every winter brings a fresh wave of desperation. In rural Arizona, the crisis is even harder to track. Small desert towns often lack shelters entirely, leaving those in need to rely on neighbors or sleep in abandoned buildings. Transportation is a huge barrier. Without buses or affordable cars, reaching help can be nearly impossible. Yet, in these remote corners, community ties can be a lifeline. Residents share meals, blankets, and even fuel for generators. Strangers will stop to hand someone a bag of groceries or a jug of clean water. Still, the overall picture remains grim. Housing costs climbing, wages stagnant, and an ever-widening gap between those who have stability and those living on the edge. Jacob says he dreams of saving enough to get a small apartment. "I just want a door I can lock at night," he says, his voice steady but his eyes tired. In a place where safety and warmth are luxuries, that dream feels both small and impossibly far away. These quieter towns may not have sprawling tent cities like Phoenix, but the homelessness here is no less real, and no less urgent. It is simply less visible, hidden in forests, back roads, and empty fields. Travel north toward Flagstaff, and the scene changes, but the struggle remains. Here, the air is cooler, the pines rise tall, and the streets feel quieter. Yet homelessness has taken root even in this mountain town. The shelters here are smaller, often run by volunteers, and they fill up quickly when the temperatures drop below freezing. In the colder months, frost clings to tent fabric and sleeping bags, and the ground turns hard as stone. Those without adequate gear face frostbite within hours. Some try to find shelter in old vans or RVs parked along the edges of town. Others camp deep in the forest to avoid being moved along by police. But isolation brings its own dangers: wild animals, injuries with no one to help, and the sheer loneliness of being cut off from human contact. I meet Jacob, a 19-year-old who left home after aging out of the foster care system. He came to Flagstaff hoping to find seasonal work, but when the tourist season ended, so did his paycheck. Now he's sleeping under a highway overpass, huddled under layers of thrift store blankets. His story is painfully common. Young people leaving foster care, women fleeing domestic violence, seniors on fixed incomes, all find themselves at risk in Arizona's shifting economy. Local food banks do what they can, distributing canned goods, bread, and occasionally fresh produce. Churches open their doors on cold nights, turning pews into makeshift beds. But resources here are stretched thin, and every winter brings a fresh wave of desperation. In rural Arizona, the crisis is even harder to track. Small desert towns often lack shelters entirely, leaving those in need to rely on neighbors or sleep in abandoned buildings. Transportation is a huge barrier. Without buses or affordable cars, reaching help can be nearly impossible. Yet, in these remote corners, community ties can be a lifeline. Residents share meals, blankets, and even fuel for generators. Strangers will stop to hand someone a bag of groceries or a jug of clean water. Still, the overall picture remains grim. Housing costs climbing, wages stagnant, and an ever-widening gap between those who have stability and those living on the edge. Jacob says he dreams of saving enough to get a small apartment. "I just want a door I can lock at night," he says, his voice steady but his eyes tired. In a place where safety and warmth are luxuries, that dream feels both small and impossibly far away. These quieter towns may not have sprawling tent cities like Phoenix, but the homelessness here is no less real and no less urgent. It is simply less visible, hidden in forests, back roads, and empty fields. In downtown Phoenix, just a few blocks from the shining glass towers, there's a stretch of pavement locals call the Zone. It's a place where hundreds of tents line the sidewalks, forming a city within a city. Here, the air smells of dust, sweat, and desperation. I walk past rows of makeshift shelters, tarps strung to chain-link fences, cardboard walls reinforced with duct tape, folding chairs serving as living rooms. In the heat, the asphalt itself seems to radiate pain. I meet Tanya, a mother of two who has been living here since she lost her job at a call center. Her youngest, only 6, clings to her side, clutching a worn teddy bear. Tanya tells me she never imagined raising her children like this, but every affordable housing list she's applied to says the same thing. Wait times of 1 to 3 years. Her voice shakes when she talks about the nights, the fights, the theft, the fear. "You don't sleep," she says. "You just listen for footsteps." In the distance, an ambulance siren wails. Someone collapses from heat exhaustion. Volunteers rush over with cold bottles of water, fanning the person until help arrives. It's a reminder that in this place, survival is measured in hours, not days. This is where the human cost of Arizona's homelessness crisis is impossible to ignore. It's here, in the Zone, where stories and statistics collide, where children try to do homework by flashlight, where veterans sleep on the same streets they once protected, where tomorrow is never promised. If you're watching this and feel the weight of Tanya's words, if you believe no child should grow up on a sidewalk, take a moment to subscribe to Minimalist US. Every click helps push these stories further into the light, and every bit of awareness can be a step toward change. Because these voices matter, and they can't afford to be unheard.